The bright lights of Hollywood shimmered with an electric energy as the cameras began to roll for the latest recording of the New York Today's Newlyweds. It was a day filled with the promise of laughter, mild revelations, and the heartwarming spirit of young love. The stage was set for four extraordinary couples who had recently embarked on the grand adventure of marriage. Couple number 1, Elizabeth and Scott Rayner, had been happily hitched for 15 months. Couple number 2, Harmony and Fred Tinsley, had recited their sacred vows 19 months ago. Couple number 3, Stacey and Robert Moore, had traded their rings 13 months prior. Finally, couple number 4, Kida and Anthony Del Valle, were the newest of the group, having celebrated their union just 2 months ago. The audience erupted in applause as the star of the show, Bobby Eubanks, made his grand entrance. He thanked the crowd with a wide, charismatic smile and welcomed everyone to the Newlywed Game. He expressed his genuine joy at having such wonderful couples join the program. With the rules established, the game began with a playful separation. The wives were asked to step away to a soundproof room, leaving the husbands on stage to face the first round of inquiries. Bobby reminded the gentlemen that he would be asking 5-point questions. The goal was simple yet challenging: predict exactly how their wives would answer. If the answers matched, they would earn points toward the ultimate prize of a wonderful second honeymoon. Bobby turned to the husbands with the first question of the day. He asked them to identify which position their wives would say makes them look the least sexy among 4 choices: sitting, standing, lying on her back, or lying on her front. Anthony was the first to speak, suggesting that his wife Kida would say sitting. He noted that she had a really good figure, so he preferred her to stand all the time. Robert followed, also choosing sitting for his wife Stacey. He explained that she was always worried about her stomach, so in her mind, sitting was the least flattering. Fred joined the consensus, admitting he might get in trouble but also choosing sitting for Harmony. He observed that while she had a nice body, sitting tended to flatten things out in what he called problem areas. Scott, however, took a different path. He chose lying on her front for Elizabeth. His reason was sweet and simple: if she were on her stomach, he would not be able to see her pretty face. The second question delved into the world of romance and appetite. Bobby asked the men what food their wives would say was most likely to put them in the mood for romance. Robert immediately suggested Mexican food, mentioning a specific local spot that always seemed to spark things up with a bit of salsa. Fred surprised the audience by naming an In-N-Out burger as Harmony's romantic catalyst, insisting it was her absolute favorite. Scott confidently chose pasta for Elizabeth, noting her deep love for the dish. Anthony finished the round by selecting watermelon for Kida, claiming it was her favorite treat. The final question for the husbands before the reunion was a creative one. Bobby asked them to complete a sentence: "If I could hypnotize my wife, I'd say, when you wake up, you will never do whatever again, not in this lifetime or the next." Fred was quick to say "nag me," implying that Harmony had a habit of keeping him on his toes. Scott chose "lose her temper," admitting that Elizabeth's moods could be unpredictable. Anthony hoped to hypnotize Kida into never being late again. Robert ended the segment by choosing whining, explaining that Stacey often used that tone to get exactly what she wanted. With the predictions recorded on cards, the show took a brief pause for messages. When the show returned, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The wives were brought back onto the stage, unaware of what their husbands had predicted. Bobby greeted them warmly and jumped straight into the first 5-point question regarding the least sexy position. Elizabeth was the first to answer, choosing lying on my front. Scott's face lit up as Bobby revealed the match. Scott had predicted exactly that because he wanted to see her face. Harmony was next, and she chose standing. She explained that she felt insecure about a small physical detail on her side when she was not wearing clothes. However, Fred had predicted sitting. No match was found there. Stacey then gave her answer, choosing sitting, which perfectly matched Robert's prediction. Kida followed suit, also choosing sitting, earning another 5 points for her and Anthony. The conversation then moved to the topic of romantic foods. Harmony revealed that chocolate was her true romantic trigger. When Bobby told her that Fred had predicted an In-N-Out burger, she laughed, admitting she loved the burgers but chocolate was the key to her heart. Stacy chose lobster, which did not match Robert's prediction of Mexican food. Keeda, however, brought a smile to the room by choosing watermelon, a perfect match for Anthony's prediction. Elizabeth chose Mexican food because she loved any meal she did not have to cook herself, but Scott had guessed pasta. Although she admitted she loved pasta, it was not her first choice for romance. The third question of the segment asked the ladies to guess their husband's hypnosis wishes. Stacy guessed that Robert would want her to stop asking him to get things for her. Bobby revealed that Robert had actually said never whine ever again. Stacy laughed, admitting that she did indeed whine all day long to get her way. Keeda guessed be late, which was a perfect match for Anthony's answer. Elizabeth guessed channel surf, but Scott had actually said lose your temper. Harmony guessed that Fred would want her to stop sending their son into the room to jump on him in the morning. Fred had actually chosen nag me, leading to a humorous exchange about her constant reminders for him to get up and help with their son, Deshaun. The game then entered a new phase where the husbands were secluded, and it was the wives' turn to predict their husbands' responses for 10 points each. Bobby asked the ladies if their husbands would describe the last time they boarded his ship of love as being the captain of a speedboat, a rowboat, a tugboat, or a dinghy. Stacy chose a tugboat. Harmony chose a dinghy, explaining that she was tired and late. Elizabeth confidently chose a speedboat. Keeda chose a rowboat, describing it as a slow and rocking experience. Next, Bobby asked for the strangest thing the wives had ever caught their husbands doing at home. Harmony shared that after Fred quit his job, she found him trying to clean the kitchen, which was a very unusual sight. Elizabeth mentioned catching Scott talking to her cat in a very specific, affectionate voice. Keeda found it strange when Anthony walked her dog. Stacy shared that Robert had spent the last 5 years constantly checking the mirror to see if he was going bald, often pulling at his hair in concern. The final 10-point question asked the wives to complete a sentence about their husbands' pasts. Based on my husband's previous girlfriends, you would think that he had a thing for women who were what? Elizabeth guessed Asian. Keeda guessed tall. Stacy gave a bold answer, suggesting strippers, claiming Robert had dated many of them before she changed him into a normal man. Harmony guessed blondes, noting that Fred's last 2 girlfriends had both been blonde despite his claims to the contrary. The stakes were raised with a 25-point bonus question about the brand of room deodorizer used most often in the home. The choices were Glade, Lysol, Renews It, or something else. Keeda and Harmony both chose something else. Stacy and Elizabeth both chose Glade. The husbands were brought back for the final reveal. Bobby asked the gentleman about the ship of love. Fred chose a tugboat, but Harmony had called him a dinghy, leading to a playful disagreement about the size and speed of his captaincy. Robert chose a rowboat, while Stacy had said a tugboat. Anthony chose a speedboat, but Keeda had predicted a rowboat. Scott was the only one to match, choosing speedboat just as Elizabeth had predicted. When asked about the strangest thing they had been caught doing, Robert mentioned playing video games, missing Stacy's observation about his hair. Anthony mentioned being caught naked after a shower, which was far from Keeda's answer about walking the dog. Scott mentioned laying around in the bathroom, not realizing Elizabeth had noticed his conversations with the cat. Fred admitted to smelling his socks to see if they were old, while Harmony had highlighted his rare kitchen cleaning session. Regarding the past girlfriends, Anthony correctly said tall, matching Keeda. Scott correctly said Asian, matching Elizabeth. Fred guessed short, missing Harmony's guess of blonde. Robert guessed crazy, but Bobby reminded him that Stacy had specifically mentioned strippers. Robert admitted he used to play in a band, which explained the connection. The excitement reached its peak as the bonus question results were announced. The prize was a fabulous 6-night all-inclusive vacation at Almond Beach Resorts in Barbados. Fred guessed Lysol, failing to match Harmony's something else. Robert guessed something else, but Stacy had said Glade. Scott guessed Glade, which was a perfect match for Elizabeth. Anthony guessed Glade, but Keeda had said something else. In the end, it was Elizabeth and Scott Rayner who emerged as the grand prize winners with 50 points. The stage was filled with cheers and warm wishes as Bobby Eubanks thanked the couples and the audience for a wonderful day. The show concluded with the couples celebrating their bond, proving that while they might not always predict every answer, the journey of marriage was always worth the ride.